Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. No, I took a little bit of a hiatus there, but now we're pounding them out again. Today I want to talk about what I'm going to call the cyber event. This will be an event to distract, an event to damage, an event to gain control, and we'll just see how real all this talk has been for the last 4 years, right? There are people out there like Dave from X22 who utterly and completely believe, and I hope he's right, trust me, man, he's a smooth cat, man, but he utterly and completely believes that there's a group of people within the United States who are in ultimate control, who are going to activate and take back control of the United States, and through by proxy take advantage of or take control of the world. And maybe not physically, but by showing all the other countries' citizens the deception and the lies and the cheating, that they will be utterly convinced that this is the time to stand up and not just hold a sign, but go and take people out who are a problem. I think that's incredibly naive that anyone thinks that that's going to happen, because it just depends. I don't know all the other commanders and other militaries. I just think that as long as you can bribe a person with some money, they'll do whatever you want them to. They'll sell their soul. I don't think they even believe they have one. But, you know, I've had to listen to this. I just want to use a dirty word. We'll quote the guy from IT crowd. This Snowden mother flipper, so on the wrong side of the game, working for the bad guys, think he's working for the good guys, spends all of his time taking a crap on the good guys, misleading everyone about how to protect yourself and how they steal your information. Go see my episode 6 years ago, How They Spy on You. And you will see how it really works, okay? Just to give you a little synopsis there, it's the giant routers of the world that steal all of your information, not something on your computer, okay? I mean, if they want your drive data, they'll find a way to sneak in and get it and do a bunch of stuff, but you would be one in 10 million people that they would ever want your stuff off your drive. They got things they're doing. They don't really care what you have on your drive. You would have to actually have a file that is like one of a million, billion, quadrillion files that's going to expose something. So when I get all these people thinking that they're being spied on and stuff, and I'm kind of looking, I'm going, well, who are you? Do you have some family members that are involved in things? Have you ever been involved? No, man, I just know they're after me. Now, you might be the result of an experiment, a psychotronic weapon or something. Yeah, that's true. That might be true. Don't know. They might be spraying the bad stuff over your head. Might be true. But in terms of getting in your system, I mean, like, whether you filed your 2009 taxes and you only made $38,000 and all you did was buy normal stuff, nobody cares, man. It's all inside your bank records anyway, right? You would have had to have had a camera taking a picture of a UFO or a UAP / United States vehicle, and then run it home to your home and upload it to your drive, and then they want to get it off your drive. That'd be it. But that's not what this is about. This is about the fact that they are pumping and dumping this big cyber security thing right now. And just like Bill Cooper warned us 20 years ago, in fact, he was done warning us 20 years ago about what was about to happen 2 months from now, 20 years ago. He called it. He called it exactly the way it happened. They murdered him before the end of the year 20 years ago. Bill Cooper also called out Alex Jones and said he was a fraud. I think that's interesting. People do change their opinions, but then again, Bill didn't get a chance to live very long into Alex's career to change his opinion. So what is this cyber attack? mean to us? What is controlled by computers and thus cannot be controlled otherwise? And what computers are handling strategic resources that are actually connected to the Internet of Things, right? I don't mean that quite literally with the technology they're coming up with, which is truly the Internet of Things, but just the Internet in general. Well, let's review what I know. Now, what I'm going to say to you is some of this is probably fairly accurate as of right now. Some of this will be stuff that I have heard, which I'll make note of, where I got this information to the best of my ability. But that doesn't matter what is actually technically capable and technically makes sense, because 20 years ago, the event that happened didn't make any sense. The story they gave you, if you really just take 10 feet back step and look at it and you go, oh yeah, that was a pile of crap. Yeah, and the whole ensuing next 10 years of information we heard about the individual was supposed to be responsible was all BS. Including the fact that he was captured by a SEAL team, whatever, right? And it's like, it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit, man. It's just unbelievable how the truth is so just right under your nose, and because people want to have conclusions. They want to have conclusions to the fake truth, but they also want to have conclusions to the conspiratorial truth. So you just have people eating crap from both sides, and no one is ever informed. So what do we have that we need to survive? Well, quite a few things, actually. But it's all, hinging on this little thin line that I alluded to in my previous episode. Power grid. Power grid number one. Well, truth be told, a power grid could be utterly and completely controlled without having to have big, giant transformer centers being controlled by super duper outside internets where you could get to it. We can physically protect our power plants and all of our transformer stations within a community and liquidate anybody who's trespassing. Well, I'll give you an example with Huntington Beach, California. Straight down, 3.5 miles towards the beach south, and about a football field to the left. Further east, kind of running down the coast diagonally, is our Edison power plant. In fact, they just built a new one. I don't even know if it's completely functional. It's huge. It's blue. It's cool. Well, that thing's got a fortress around it, and the water plant is right next to it. It's got a fortress around it. So you're telling me some dissident's going to get in there with some laptop and tell it what to do? Oh, really? You can take literally hedge clippers and just cut the wires that have anything to do with outside internet. And then they could intranet all of their locations up and down the coast here to all the transformers. You deploy a National Guard on every transformer. Hell, we'll volunteer, man. Just give me a sandwich every 6 hours and I'll be okay. Make sure my bills get paid. That's about it, right? We'll make sure no one touches these facilities. So, power grid going down. Well, everybody can have things surprised, but the idea that these things can happen to us and have a prolonged effect on us, which will be definitely how they sell it to you, is simply untrue. Now, there's probably pockets of the universe in the United States, maybe New York City. I don't think LA, because LA is so spread out. And, think about all the gangsters of LA going, we will, instead of selling rocks on a corner, we'll load up, pack up, get deputized, and we'll handle our neighborhood transformers. Believe me, you ain't getting in. San Francisco's kind of dense. Chicago's kind of dense. There's a few towns that are a little bit dense, but some towns are so dense, but they're not big. Kansas City's kind of dense, but it's not big. If you think Kansas City's physically large, in terms of its dense little collection of skyscrapers, you need to go on a road trip. So power is huge, right? Power is gigantic. What else could they say would affect power? Well, they're probably going to come up with some hocus pocus BS that technology will be destroyed through maybe power surges, right? I don't think that that's possible, quite frankly. These things are pretty hardwired to carry a certain load, and because, this technology is built to be governed by design, I think we'd be okay. Now, they're still going to pitch this kind of stuff, most likely. Power transformers blown out across the United States. It will take 10 years to replace them all. And I'm sure that, if this is what they're planning on doing, check all of the areas that make transformers, the big pigs, what they call them, pigs, full of oil hanging up on the telephone poles. The ones that look like trash cans up there. I'm sure there's going to be a crisis in trying to get those things manufactured quickly. What's another one? I mean, this is pure cyber. We're going to branch out in the next one. Water supply. Water supply, okay. Again, it's fairly localized, right? I don't think Huntington Beach water goes to many other locations. It might service Costa Mesa, which is a neighboring, or Fountain Valley, which is a neighboring city. I would imagine that's possible. But it's fairly localized. It's fairly mechanical. But remember when they came up with that first cyber attack, I believe it was at a, if I remember right, some hydroelectric kind of place where they had, in a security camera, they were filming a Windows machine that had been commandeered by an outside person, and there was a generator in the room, which I believe wasn't actually connected to any dependency grid. But they turned up that generator to the highest setting, and it just sit there and burned itself out until it went boom on camera, so that you would have some sort of case study in your mind that this is possible. You know what I heard, man? They get in on these computers, man, and blow up the transformers, blow up the generators. They want you to have a few of those things. So expect a little premeditation and a little bit of sort of oil in the old engines. Water, obviously would have to be destroyed in the sense that the pumps would have to be destroyed. They're a little less prominent than, let's say, transformer centers, like electrical transformer centers. We have like a little football field. It's got the barbed wire fence around it, and you can see, sort of the lattice work you might see in a concert holding up lights. Water's kind of everywhere. There's little pumps everywhere, giant pumps everywhere. I can't imagine that being greatly disturbed. The facilities themselves are bunkers. They're like prisons, man. I mean, they're literally like military bases. But they'll come up with an excuse. What would be the other side note? Not a cyber attack, but the one reason why they protect water supplies is, one, they're putting fluoride in it and they don't want you to see that. But the other one is they don't want anyone in there dropping some horrible disease-ridden bacteria or something in there, or some other thing that can travel in water. It really needs a bacterial body to surround something in order to create sort of like a plague. You put viral matter in, it's going to die. The elements will destroy it. That's why we know that airborne stuff is extremely, extremely rare. Like Dr. Fauci said. What other significant cyber attacks can they claim? Well, probably your banking. Your banking can be attacked. Imagine the bank that you use. Remember, Wells Fargo just cut off everyone's line of credit. Everyone's line of credit, not your credit card, but your line of credit. Credit card is a proxy business they have with Visa, MasterCard, Discovery, etc., American Express. They have the money. The banks sell the cards. The banks make a percentage of the profit on the card. All the interest that everyone ends up paying, right? Consequently, the banks have never had to acknowledge that 2020 existed. They are allowed to just operate as if everything was okay. While governors in all 50 states were either forced or coerced or loved it to force you not to work, unless you were critical, like Nancy Pelosi's hair salon, or the governor of Michigan's husband that needed a water ski, or Gavin Newsom that needed to keep his winery open. Those businesses were good to go. But now money would be interesting. Money could go in a bunch of different fashions, right? How do you use a bank to survive? Well, the prominent way is that you have a balance in a database and you use your ATM card, your credit card to get the balance to pay for bills, right? Pay your rent, pay your car payments, pay for goods you have to use to stay alive, like food and water. Now imagine all of that getting cut off. And of course, the banks are all in on this with the deep state. And so they're just going to say, well, here's all the passwords. Here you go. Okay. So your first level of that particular cyber attack would be cutting you off from being able to use ATMs. Your money's still in there and it's still secure, but it's cut off. Second layer would be to erase all your bank statements, all of your balances to the point where you're going to have to stand in a court while the banks run off with your digits and spend them someplace else, or they don't even care, Their leases are paid. They own all the skyscrapers in the world, right? You're going to have to somehow prove what you had. It's going to be a bank statement. Oh, but you don't get those printed anymore. They're all online. You can't log into the website. I mean, the websites would probably all be down because the entire infrastructure of the internet would be down. So you can't touch anything. What would you do? Imagine you were a millionaire on Monday and on Tuesday morning, you're a zeronaire, right? That'd suck. You certainly won't be able to get my show if they cut the internet. No, they could zero out your account, and because moving the money around causes a trail, right? They move it from your bank account to someplace in the world. Well, that creates a path. So they don't want to get caught. Maybe they move it just as a trick, like some 007 movie, right? Some Mission Impossible movie. But now imagine you had loads of money, big investment. Now, they can hit you two different ways. They could hit you instantly in one day like a fire taking out your house, erasing your history. All those digital photographs you have never had printed, you never bought an external drive to keep them, well, they're all erased in the cloud. All that Gmail you have, all that stuff you've been relying on, all those free services instead of just buying a domain and loading up on your own private server, which, it's like a GoDaddy. It's like maybe $100 a year. If you buy a medium version of it, all of it's gone. But now imagine they get in there and they siphon slowly. It's a week-long thing. They study the cyclical nature of your checking in on your account, and they realize you only check once a month or once every 2 weeks. And so they find that pattern, little bit of like little machine learning. They find out and they just drain you when you're not looking. And then they drop the big hammer. Right? So they're moving your assets into real assets somewhere else in the world. And by the time you find out and you try to explore, well, the whole bank is down and your money's all gone anyway. It's just like someone kidnapping one of your family members and you never see him again. It's like my buddy Kyle says, what has a bank ever done for you? Why would I keep my money inside a bank? Now, what I don't know about this whole concept is that if you had a mortgage, I'm imagining any type of huge cybercrime pauses, okay, your landlord or you as an owner of a piece of property for being capable of being penalized in any way, shape, or form of having to pay your bills. But isn't it funny how they configured 2020, and with our holier-than-thou 45 president, he did jack shit to protect you at the banking level. He left us out there to be slaughtered by the wolves, man. While the Italian government, I think, went in 6-month increments and paused the ability for banks to collect money. They gave renters protection to a bunch of people in the United States, but they didn't give the mortgage people protection. My bank, Chase Manhattan, deferred, I think, for 2 months. I think it was June and July. My agency in Hollywood was literally cut off in March. By June, they had laid off 60% of their employees. So March, April, May, I had people who were supposed to be sending me checks, literally said they were in the mail, and of course they never arrived because they never cut them, and then all this crap happened. I'm almost glad for them, and things have rebounded a little bit, but the biggest scare is that you will lose everything that you have ever saved in your entire lifetime. So until this happens, I want you to go find a bank statement, go download a PDF, print that fucking thing out, would you? So that you can have some sense of what you owned before this thing goes down. Because unless a miracle happens, like Dave from X22 says, unless a miracle happens, and happens quick, which I don't think any of this is going to happen quick, if at all, they're going to pop this. I think they're ready to pop this whenever they need to. I think they've been prepared for a very, very long time. What other cyber thing could occur? Well, the one I alluded to in the last example is that you have your whole life inside a digital domain, don't you? All of your family photos. I definitely have way too many of my photos in digital media. Now, I do have things backed up and off the grid. What I don't know is, I seriously doubt there'd be any EMP sort of attack in addition to this, because that's sort of way outside the wheelhouse of Russia, which I'm sure this is where this is going to come from, or they're going to blame it on China. The two biggest hacking countries that I know that we run into is Russia coming in quietly because they just have the best hackers in the planet. And the other one is India calling you. Why? Because we have outsourced so much of our customer service to India. When you get called by an Indian person, it sounds normal, right? Third tier would be Chinese, but they're going to have to sneak in like the Russians, and they don't hold a candle to Russia. And I don't mean to take anything away from the CCP's ability to hack your shit. The CCP is brilliant in that they sell our kids their apps like TikTok, WeChat. You're just using their software constantly and not realizing that when the last president, Pompeo, warned you, get off those platforms. There's all kinds of problems with it, but one, they're basically listening to everything that you're doing, deducing how to strike you better, stealing your information. But there's obviously a huge psychological game going on with TikTok. That's why TikTok is probably, if you want to think about like TikTok in a way that's accurate, I would say, if you were to get on the database in your hometown and say, where are all the pedophiles in my hometown, all the sexual offenders, and then you hire one of them to watch your kids, that's pretty much what it's like to let your kid be on TikTok. And what used to formerly be Musical.ly. I've seen it. I've just seen good kids turn into just things that if you have a brain, it should be a regrettable thing. Now, is everything on those platforms crap? No, but a whole bunch of it is. And even if your kid's not producing content for those channels, they're ingesting it. Oh, sure, there's some funny, benign things up there, but as long as in between, your kids are getting all screwed up. Well, mission accomplished, man. America will be rotted from the inside out. You know, it's kind of like a fruit. So you got a cantaloupe and you cut it in half and you put it in the fridge and it's all orange and it looks great. And when you, oh God, you ate the other half that first night, but then you let it sit in there for 7 days. It still looks good. And you're all hungry for cantaloupe and you pull the wrapper off and you smell it and it's just like a foot. It just smells like sour cheese. Well, that's exactly what TikTok does. It smells good at first. You can find some funny things in there, and then eventually, whew, and it's sort of in the category of cyber attack. It's a psychological cyber attack. And of course, they just want to get offended anytime you catch a bad person, right? Dave said something very important today in X22 report. And I've said this, I think, in my liar episode. But there's a categorical methodology of a liar and a pathological liar. The second they are caught and you are proving to them that they lied to you, they throw up this one, they start trying to yell and shout, and which is why you got to yell louder and push them down. You know, they want to convince you that you've offended them, you've angered them in a way that you're not allowed to anger them. They have the, and they're trying to push you back, and you just got to keep pushing them until you push them straight out the room, man. And just go, hit the road, Jack, man, because we're not listening to any more of this crap. There's already enough challenges in life that I don't need someone close to me who's telling lies, right? So that's what's happening with a lot of these organizations. They get caught, they get called out, and of course, with the corporation, they just send a bunch of money over to politicians. You realize TikTok is its own little organization. However, the CCP itself will send money over to pay off all these shills to keep it going, because it's not about what you think it's about. It's about a much deeper situation. Now let's go into a more insidious cyber attack, which I don't know if this would happen, because I think they want to have the guillotine cut power, cut water, and everything else will fall. They want that little, timber moment on the big redwood tree in the forest. Well, we don't have to chop the whole thing up, just chop the bottom, and then it falls over, and then we'll harvest, right? But the interesting one would be one that has been alluded in the Blackmail episodes. I don't know what season it was. I can't remember. Because remember, the seasons got a little funky. There was the Christmas special, which was, I think, pawned off at season 3. By the time they came out with season 3, I think they pushed that into season 2 on the playlist. And so anyway, there's one, though, that goes like this. They played it a little bit different than I think it will happen in real life. But for instance, people were doing things in front of their laptops, doing things online that they shouldn't be doing. And they tricked you into thinking that it was something more minor. One kid pleasured himself in front of his computer and then immediately gets a message saying, hey, we just recorded that off your laptop, and we're going to send this around to your family and friends. I think what you found out later was that he was doing this to videos that were super duper inappropriate and massively illegal. Of course, we know some presidential sons that have done this, and we know some movie stars that have done this, and so there you go. So I think that is a technique that, okay, yeah, maybe if you were to get involved with that, they might get you like that, but that's not the point. Imagine all of your private communications, especially through all the chat software you've ever used. Facebook chat, Signal, Telegram, WeChat, WhatsApp, all these things, ICQ, Skype, they're all owned by giant corporations, man. I mean, Signal might be okay, Telegram might be okay, maybe, but they can hack every single package you've ever sent over the internet. They can hack it instantaneously. The way that they say they do it is that it's actually stored in a buffer for 72 hours, unless you have a search warrant on you or some sort of, eavesdropping warrant on you. And then they'll store you for a really long, indefinite amount of time, and they're looking for something, right? Of course, we know now the FISA court can be lied to, and they'll absolutely let anybody from those organizations, the intelligence organizations, spy on you with fake information. And there's no recourse whatsoever. No one ever gets in any trouble, right? We learned that. That's what we learned in the last 4 years. There is no punishment for the criminals. Keep that in mind as you think that you're going to have an X-22 victory. Maybe. But now imagine if you're doing some little stuff on the side that you're not supposed to. You're married and you're talking to some other person and you're really sharing some intimate concepts with them. You're not even physically seeing them. Because if you're physically seeing them, you're probably not chatting too much online. But they get that information and they start to communicate with you and say, well, you're going to be inside the novel Needful Things, written by Stephen King, where the devil's going to give you a little trinket for free. But in exchange, you're going to go do what he asks you to do, and you're not even going to register that it's a bad thing. Except this is going to be straight up blackmail. The worse thing that you do, and the more powerful you are, and the more money you have, the more the blackmail gets worse and worse and worse. The more you're a nobody, there's not much they can do to you. The more you're single, well, whatever. The only thing they can do is they say, we're going to tell that lady's husband that you did this. And who knows? But imagine on one particular day, I'm not sure interface-wise how this would work, but I've said this a long, long time ago, but all of your private information is just exposed. Everybody can have it. And it might go a little something like this. We know that Facebook admitted in the Senate that they sold a big snapshot of their entire database to Cambridge Analytica in England to be examined, to be sold. It's straight up Westworld harvesting of who you are as a human being to then target you for anything and everything that they want to target you with. This could be some benign marketing. But now imagine, because we've had this happen before, right? There's been, situations where passwords are stolen in the tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of passwords for things. And they publish it on the web as a file. And then, what was it? I think it was Red Pill 78. He was talking about the fact that there was a database out there that you could just go visit the web page and then put your email address in, and it would tell you if there was anything attached to your information. Seemed like an email harvesting situation, right? Seemed like a big mailing list thing. There was no guarantee they weren't going to sell your little check my thing. But now imagine there's a giant database out there, terabytes, petabytes. And on one day, your information of everything you've ever transmitted, text messages, all the way to every single chat service you've ever done, is all out there in a database, and your spouse, your child, your employer can go check on you. And all they have to do is put in your email address into this system, and it just barfs it straight out. Imagine, when infidelity happens within a relationship, especially a marriage with children, what typically happens? Well, if the kids are really young, let's say they're between, 12 and 16, you might be able to level with them and tell them what's going on. But then you're able to craft sort of a narrative around the divorce, and you may be absolutely behind closed doors with your spouse. It might be a really nasty thing. You're saying things that you would never want your kids to hear. Mommy's done something bad, daddy's done something bad, whatever it is. But now imagine this gets dropped in the world, and your kids can go up to a database and search on daddy's email, and boom, daddy can't do anything to get that stuff off the internet. And it's all his dick pics and stuff to somebody else. My friend has a great dick pic collection he likes to show us, and it's like Dick Van Dyke, Dick Gregory, what was it? Tricky Dick Nixon. It's hilarious. Just a bunch of guys named Richard. But now imagine, so Needful Things, the book by Stephen King. Hey man, if you haven't read it yet, then that's your own fault. It's been out for a long time, okay? But what he did was the devil created a civil war within this little tiny town about the size of my hometown. But now imagine that this goes out, and it's just creating absolute chaos in the country. Everyone's mortified to death. I mean, they are so embarrassed. There's no secrets anymore. You can just go through your own contact list, put it in there, and boom, you're like, oh my God, I can read everybody's stuff. Now, it would probably be very short-lived before, a federal agency would go in and shut it down. But what if it's in foreign soil? Do they block all the IP addresses, But now there's two sides to every equation, right? Problem, reaction, solution, as David Icke always says. Order out of chaos. Okay, what could that actually entail for the cyber tech situation? Well, it's going to be played out like, oh gosh, we didn't know this was going to happen. And there's going to be that German guy, sounds completely 1945-ish. He's out there talking about we need cybersecurity and, whatever. They're telling you this so that when it happens, you're primed. And then what happens? You say, oh, your money's gone. Well, they're gonna have emergency response teams to go into think tanks and think up solutions for your problem. It's all pre-orchestrated. Remember, the Patriot Act, 12,000 pages? Only, Senator Ron Paul read it, and that Kucinich guy read it, and everyone else is like just signing it into action. And it was only like 1,100 pages, but it referenced out like 10,000 other pages. And it just basically sold out the Constitution of the United States. Oh, great job, guys. all pre-planned. The buy-ins were already in, meaning they had already visited the people on the Hill to make sure that they were going to sign this thing before it ends up happening. They don't want to go to all this trouble, throw that out there, and nobody signs it. And that thing is still in place to this day. With what narrative around why it still exists? Because we could get attacked by these phantom enemies that have all been extinguished. I mean, one of the things I told you in the last episode was that I was told recently, as a second degree contact to myself, that, people inside the military at various levels have seen weaponry that can kill the entire planet extremely quickly, extremely efficiently. There's nothing you can do to stop it. And yet we have ISIS and Al-Qaeda out there in some Middle Eastern setting, unable to be destroyed. Okay, so somebody's lying. Somebody's lying in that equation. Either we don't have those weapons or we do have those weapons, which means those agencies are out there in the desert being allowed to exist, which is why when 45 got in, he visited that place, grabbed that one commander, and said, what's it going to take to nail this? And he goes, dude, we can nail him in two weeks to 2 months, completely just knock him out. And he goes, okay, your bosses are no longer in charge. You're in charge. Get it taken care of. Boom, they're gone. Just overnight. If we don't have money, then how are we going to buy anything? Why would a corporation like your local grocery store, your local drugstore, why would they ever ship anything anywhere? They're not going to get paid. What would anybody get paid? I mean, you're going to have some good Samaritans that will jump in a truck, and you're going to have some folks that are going to continue refining oil. And oil refineries are always perpetrated as being attacked. They have malfunctions and that kind of stuff, explosions, oopsie doopsie. When we had brownouts in 2000 in California, it was all heavily orchestrated. We had the voice recording tapes of the conference calls where these people were utterly planning to shut down 2 out of 3 power plants here in California, put them under maintenance so we'd have brownouts. It's all pre-orchestrated. So that then President Bush Jr. could get his college roommate, who ran Enron, to sell Texas super-duper 50 to 60 times the unit of electricity from Texas to California, instead of California buying it from hydroelectric plants in Canada. It was completely and utterly orchestrated. Okay, so we had a change of the presidency here in the United States. Well, the gas companies didn't make a tremendous amount of money in the last 4 years because for the first time in I don't know how many decades, we became energy independent. America is full of tons and tons of oil. Just in the 49 states, or I should say 48 states that make up the continent, part of it, right? And that Alaska thing has the 3rd largest reserve in the world. Remember, the first is off the coast of Scotland. It's owned by BP. It's untapped. The 2nd biggest one in the world is off the coast of Brazil. When they tried to tap it, the president was cooed out. An IMF female executive took over the country, drove it into the Stone Ages. Then she left when all the work was done, signing toxic loans to the IMF. And then they've just had chaos ever since, right? But we were going to pipeline it down. So no trains, no carbon emissions, just pipeline that stuff straight down. Well, what happened right when we had the switch? We had the full green zero carbon emission methodology of transporting this stuff shut off. And Warren Buffett's train system is used now to deliver that oil, creating massive carbon footprints because it's all diesel. I tell you, man, people will buy bridges in Brooklyn. So we've got this thing going on right now. It's a residual effect of 2020. We're worried about getting a drink forced on us, right? Remember little tiny drinks at the bars, right? Like I said in the last episode, what do you call those? That's why we call them drinks. Okay, well, obviously a ton of us are not going to want to ever in a million years get those drinks. But now imagine they cut the power and they cut off your money. Because they cut power. Your ATMs don't work. The banks can't open. No one could even use a cash register. So now it's going to be going in to get all of your food supplies. It's World War Z, okay? It's all tented little communities, military distributing goods. And you're going to have to do whatever they say to survive. And okay, so maybe you've got 2 or 3 months worth of stuff stashed. Some of you have been able to buy those 1-year supplies, but they crashed the economy for quite a while before you need to purchase a lot of these things, because now you're seeing it black and white, man. You're like, whoa, honey, we should get enough food for the kids, those ration things that they ship a pallet to your house. But you're going to have gallons and gallons of water shipped to your house too. Alrighty? So imagine they've got a huge regiment to get all that stuff. A bunch of illegal crap they want to force on you. Now you're starting to see the full picture of it all. This is why the X-22 approach of Trump had to show the people. That doesn't work. It's naive. That's naive beyond naive, man. That we're just going to go through the court system. We're going to follow all the rules. Yippity-doo-dah. It's like, that doesn't work, dude. They're not playing by the rules. That event that happened 20 years ago, was that playing by any rules? Was it legal to do that? No, it wasn't legal to do that. And that's how they play. And I don't think we're talking about breaking any rules. I think what we're talking about is getting a list of people that we know have collaborated against your country, my country, full sedition and treason, and do what they need to do with them. I mean, you don't want to be an animal about it, but you're going to have some tribunals and some hearings and try to figure out what's going on. And trust me, you take out a third of them, the other 2/3 are going to scramble to save their own ass, because they're just pieces of shit anyway, and they're going to be a lot less effective. All of these organizations that take money to run out and loot and destroy homes and tear down statues and all that kind of stuff, when they know they're not going to get a paycheck, how many protests do you think are going to happen? They're going to get the other 99% of the world going after them, because we're going to be sick and tired of it, because people want law and order. And there's a popular show. I won't ruin this for you, but this would be a spoiler if you knew what show it was. So I won't tell you what show it is. But I recently watched a show, and it was a big climactic kind of show for a particular series. And it was really basic. It was a basic archetype for the finale story of that particular season. It's real simple. These two individuals were given a choice to let this dictator remain in place and hold the world together, because he claimed that he had been holding the place together for a very long time. Now, he was getting tired, and he wanted to hand it over to the one of those two, or both of them, and said, okay, I'm getting tired. You got to do it. It's almost like that Santa Claus stories. What is it? Ernest Saves Christmas, where Santa was like trying to hand him the baton to be Santa Claus. I think that's the way it went, right? There's a couple movies like that, right? Like Tim Allen had one like that too. But the other option that they had was, one is that they become the dictator, but they're, for good, apparently. But if they murdered this guy, which they finally got to a point in the conversation that could take place, he said, look, if you kill me, then this whole place is going to turn into chaos, because what's going to happen is everyone's going to get free will, and free will is going to release chaos on the world, sort of selling you subliminally a monarchy that is definitely something that's coming towards America, because America's about to be completely and utterly destroyed. That's why the royal family's all over our news. We are literally 12 months away from this happening. So for 45 and his Q team running around saying, okay, we're just going to go through the courts and you should vote. And, when the elections come around, we're going to take over all those positions. It's like, dude, you won't be alive by the time all that crap happens. Or if you are, it won't matter. It won't matter. Quite frankly, I think at this stage in the game, and this is me being cynical, but also being realistic at the same time, imagine one of these situations, almost like a weird movie, where the last president of the United States, which we'll call 45, because he was the 45th president, imagine all this chaos ensues and all this insanity ensues, and they turn around and pick him up and his whole family, and he thinks he's being exterminated. Now, they may actually just do that because they just can't stand the guy. But quite honestly, I think that there's a situation that might come to a surprise to him. which is they grab him and his whole team that was this 17 movement for 4 years or whatever. They bring him inside a big ballroom, some really nice location. Oh, they're not free anymore, okay? They're in handcuffs or whatever it takes to keep him under control. But they sit him down, and there's just a whole group of dudes. It's like the elders that ran Boardwalk Empire. The old guys, that were in Jekyll Island, those kind of dudes, right? And they say, thank you so much. You fell for everything we threw at you. We kept telling you that you were succeeding when you were actually failing. We were so ahead of you that, this is why we planned 100 years ahead. We planned for you to come about because just like, Quaid as a part of Total Recall, right? The movie about Total Recall was that Hauser, Arnold Schwarzenegger's real personality, had let himself get transformed into Quaid. He got inserted as some miner, literally pounding rocks with the jackhammer. And they wanted to infiltrate a portion of the Mars population that they couldn't get to because they couldn't get anyone to trust them. They wanted to find this dude called Quado. And he led them right to Quado. And then Quado's dead. Boom. Bullet through the head. So they could tell Trump, hey, thank you so much. You got everyone in the world who was ever going to be against us to show themselves in social media. And because they're too stupid to get off of it and expressing their opinions and making it well known, because I'm screwed with this show, but some of you guys could hide out and just listen, right? We know who to execute in the FEMA camps around the world. Thank you. And because you did that, we're going to let you go free. Oh, and by the way, you might enjoy the world a lot better because there's only 1.8% of the world left. Now, his soul will be fine with God. That's for sure. But imagine it's just that easy. And this is what I've discovered about the world. If everybody's hoorah, hoorah about the winning team, whichever one you think you're a part, red pill, blue pill, whatever, you're going to stay steadfast to it, and you're like, I'm going to show 45 that I was never not on his side. I will show that I was patient the entire time. Well, I want 107 to love me because I want him to show up on my YouTube show. There's a lot of those fucking people out there, right? They just sit there with goo-goo eyes. With this guy's just bullshitting them 24/7. It's not that he's saying things that are incorrect or wrong in some context, but the speed of which it occurs and the way it occurs, unless there's a magic wand out there, man, unless John J. Trump did find some sort of super weapon or some time machine, okay, they're probably still in control, 100% in control, right? If somebody fights back against our movement, then, these channels like X22 or Red Pill, more so X-Pill, X-Pill, Jesus, more so X22, they'll say things like, look at them panic. Look at them panic. Oh, they're panicking. Look at Biden. He's out there running around saying that no fraud ever happened during the election. Okay, well, he's saying that. I don't think that's panic. I just think that's standard mode of operation. I don't see panic. Oh, sure, they put two of the worst candidates from that party in the presidency and vice presidency. Yeah, of course. Kamala couldn't handle a discussion at the border, for God's sakes, right? Again, I'm just going to give this example. I think I gave it one previous time. I can't remember what video I did it in because I've had this big lag because of my hard drive being rebuilt. She goes to the border. It's been over 100 days. They keep saying on our press, on our end, look at this chick. There's a huge crisis at the border and she's not going to the border. And she keeps saying stupid things like, well, I haven't been to Europe either. What? Look over there, squirrel. But she gets in front of the mic down there at the border and she gets all flustered with the press. She gets all defensive with the press. Can't think on her toes. And I'm giving her crap because she's the vice president of the United States Corporation. All right. So I'm not supposedly at her level of intellectual capability. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a DEA. I haven't put a bunch of my own, it's not even hers, but I haven't put a bunch of minorities in prison for the rest of their lives. I haven't done that. Right. But all she had to say at the border was really simple. All she had to say was, well, you're giving me a bunch of crap because I didn't come down here when you said I should come down here. Well, one, you're the press. You're not the government. Two, I don't actually do the work down here at the border. The border people do this work. And guess what? While you're complaining about me not being down here, every single day of my life I get briefed on the progress at the border. I'm not trying to defend this one. I'm just telling you this would have been a much better answer, and it did take more than maybe 120 IQ to figure this out, right? And she had weeks and months and supposedly experts helping her out. And she couldn't come up with this answer. I just couldn't believe it, right? So all she has to say was, look, I was only going to come down here during a milestone moment. And really, the milestone hasn't really occurred. Or she could make one up. She could just name off a few things. She goes, look, this is just a smidgen of what needs to happen. This is just a tiny portion of the milestone chart that we have the roadmap to clean up this mess, which she could blame on Trump. None of that intellectual interaction. You see her stumble on her words. She gets all flustered. Her skin color changes. I mean, every indication this woman has no control over that moment, that engagement with the press. When she said that stupid line about not being in Europe. Okay, she wasn't at the border when that was asked to her. All she had to do was say what I just said. She would have cleaned up her entire portfolio with the press. It is interesting, though. The press was giving her crap in the first place. Just like the White House spokesman said, what side are you on, man? Because they weren't softballing her. Interesting. You can't trust any press right now, no matter what you think. The only one I really go to, but they still have all the shilly press that we've ever had, is One American News Network. That's the only one I kind of look at and go, okay, well, I'm getting a little bit more information than I'm getting from the other sources. Newsmax, nah, they're all co-opted, man. Every single one of them. What's interesting is a bunch of us, you included, we're trying to work with our human resources on the ground, right? And we're getting completely different stories in most cases from the people that are on the ground, people in the military, people in police forces, people in government. So what seems to be really going on in these meetings and stuff, and the stuff we see on TV, is just like black and white. It's two trains going in opposite directions of reality. But now, who would do these cyber events? Well, let's take a lesson. Let's take a lesson from 20 years ago. What was generally the narrative of that situation? Well, it was blamed on some guy in a cave somewhere. This is what Bill Cooper was exposing. He said once that guy got interviewed by CNN, it was on like Donkey Kong. And sure enough, he was right. And of course, Alex Jones listened to Bill Cooper and copied him and said that he was the first guy to actually say this. And I've seen Alex Jones basically act like Bill Cooper didn't exist when Alex was still alive January 1st, 2002, and Bill Cooper was dead by January 1st, 2002. So I think we can safely assume that the organizations that have always done this will be the organizations that do it again. I don't think it's a big surprise. If I was saying this right now and it was 20 years ago about that other event, I would probably end up like Bill Cooper. But now I'm nothing, man. I'm just a total infinitesimal speck of CO2 or H2O, going into the ocean, man. So the problem with that is that it's sort of good and it's sort of bad, right? They love chaos so they can create order. Well, 2020 was complete proof that we are still massively mentally impaired in this world. People unwilling to read what the box says before they take an object out of the box and put it on their face to protect them against something that the box says right on the outside, it does not protect you against this stuff. They just make up stuff, right? They so want to be right, and they want to be in public and feel like that they're safe when they actually are by nature, according to Dr. Fauci, right? So when your authorities have been allowed by your military to remain extremely corrupt, when all of the evidence that you would ever need to arrest them and put them away has been ignored, then you are just, it's tantamount to joining sort of a world that you're really not a part of because you're a good person. And you're intelligent, and you can see right from wrong and lies from truth. You have sort of left your body, wherever you came from. You're a pure soul entity, and you went into a being on that planet simply to experience Armageddon. And there's nothing you can do to change it because the majority of the world is a bunch of like morons. If the military does not do their job in the United States of America, okay, these are the individuals you can hold responsible for pretty much all the deaths that these little drinks have caused, which is now in the, the adverse effects are well inside the millions, and the deaths are probably approaching 500,000. We don't know the real numbers, right? Apparently, the numbers being reported in the United States are 1/5 of the real numbers that are actually occurring. Fatalities due to this drink. Again, we have landmark cases right here in Orange County. The mother that lost her husband, her son who's 15, and her brother-in-law, or her brother, I think it was her brother-in-law. These are just 2-degree communications to me by very credible people. All right. Those are landmark cases. What was the movie Saving Private Ryan all about? It is where a lot of us learned that if you had a family with, say, 3 sons. I think Saving Private Ryan's story was a family had 4 sons in World War II. And 3 out of 4 had suffered fatalities. They had died. And so they were trying to save Private Ryan and escort him out of the battlefield. But he was on, I think, Omaha Beach, right? And so he's being deployed in the most dangerous engagement one of the most dangerous engagements towards the end of the war. And so they were capturing him and trying to get him to safety. The problem, he was already deployed to Europe. He's at the height of the war. Brilliant idea. I mean, I guess it's a true story, right? Part of it, right? Okay, well, you have a family that loses the breadwinner and loses a future breadwinner, a son. Okay, great. Why isn't that international news, man? Why isn't there a GoFundMe for that family so that at least that woman can raise a couple $100,000 or maybe even more to survive? She's grieving 3 funerals. She has to see her son die. Who believes that you should be able to see your children die? Nobody. All right? Well, it's happening. Stuff's happening all the time. Celebrities are keeling over right after they get this thing. But I'm digressing, aren't I? I want to reinforce this because if the cyber attacks create a situation where you are forced medically to comply with something that is experimental and unapproved, then guess what? You may or may not survive. And if it's part of the final extermination of mankind, down to my projected 1.8%, which is 150 million people left, it's actually less than 1.8, but I'm being generous with the population of the world. And again, some areas of the world are controlled by different governments. They probably will not comply and kill off all their people. Some countries may actually end up with 1 billion people left over. Why? Because they are controlled already by a communistic regime that says, well, look, you don't want to kill us. We control our people 100%. And even though there's just an infinitesimal speck of leadership there that could be exterminated such that these people would be free, they have them under such lock and key, man. Social credit systems and all that kind of stuff are already in place, man. It's all been, if you can just see what's been going on, it all interlocks perfectly. So, I was making a point earlier and I cut myself off, but complaining about this sort of plan is actually very productive because you're letting those people that feel like nothing can stop what's going to happen, go get your popcorn, don't have to do anything, and then all of a sudden the narrative changed and it was fight, 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 you got to do this, you got to do that. No, well, whatever happened to nothing can stop what's happening? Certainly seems like there was a shift in control, a shift in certainty that everything was going to happen the way it was planned. And of course, The X-22 narrative about the whole thing is that, we had to see them create all the crimes or commit all the crimes so we knew who was involved. It completes the Polaroid wall of all of the criminals, and that makes complete sense to me. But I don't know, man. I don't know what what it looks like to me is that the longer you allow this to go, the amount of fatalities that will happen because the amount of fighting that will happen. And, there's civil war fighting, which I think probably would be fairly muted because eventually, the barista boys are going to find out that they're really not capable of defending themselves against the average public. They're baristas by day and Antifa by night, Anyone shows up with a mask on and a skateboard trying to swing it at some old lady's head is going to end up getting their wig split, as they say, right? So that's not gonna be the big problem. The big problem is going to be if the United States of America throws down and all the European EU-controlled military is brainwashed into, one, still worshiping monarchies. Okay, if you're worshiping a monarchy, you really believe in it. You could live under one and not believe in it, right? I get you a blank check for that, right? But if you're like, whoa, for the honor of the Queen, I'm going to run over to America and kill a bunch of innocent people so that they can be ruled just like me. I'll spread the bullshit to everybody. So at least my bad decisions will be neutralized because there won't be a single soul on planet Earth that knows that I made a bad decision, right? Why do you think pedophiles want to turn the whole place into a pedo-friendly world? Because they cease to become criminals. All their crimes, well, they go away. It's no longer against the law. It's retroactively expunging their records. We just have sex with kids, right? And to think that we have a president of the United States right now that is an absolute pedo, man. Absolute, man. He may not have done everything all the other horrible people have done, but we've seen enough on C-SPAN that if you're willing to do it on camera, HD camera on C-SPAN, again, I'll repeat it. I've seen him do one thing at least twice on video, probably 2 or 3 times, but we can't prove it because we can't get a good camera angle on it. But rubbing your junk up on little kids inside your pants, right? You still got your pants on, but you're rubbing it up on kids. I have a very good friend. I even dated her for a little while. Her kid came home and said the preacher was doing that to her at the church in front of other people, but nobody knew what was going on. So she tells her mom tells the other elders, the elder dudes, watch this guy. He does it. They restrained this man, called the cops, and he went to jail. For what I have seen the current president of the United States do on video. He was vice president when he was doing it. And that's just what we've caught on camera, man. So, hate to burst anyone's bubble, but that's true. And I downloaded all the footage so I could have it on my computer. And I've duplicated it out, and I'll always have it, But, if the internet goes down, can't get it to you. And if people don't want to see it, they don't want to see it. And what's funny is at my smoke lounge, when it first came up 5 years ago, we were playing it for a few guys, and some dudes, everybody with children, right? Some of them, like most of the guys, had at least 2 to 3 kids, if not more. Most of the guys came on board and went, oh my God, if I ever caught anybody doing this to my kid, And then one dude was sort of, nah, he's just, that's not what it is. It took him about 6 months. And then finally, he never said that again. And he was then the opposite. He was pissed off that it was happening. Okay. These are people in charge, man. These are people in charge. So when you think about events occurring to destroy the planet, it's a bad situation. You won't have anyone to run to. The authorities are the ones that are doing it. Now, there's one other area that I don't know how much this would cause a problem. There's definitely an area where it could cause chaos, aka fatalities. But I had a conversation with 2 pretty much world experts, at least in the United States, where they were telling me that all of the transit that is controlled, mostly trains and subways, okay? They're all controlled by computers, of course. But they said that the way that this works, and this is not any secret to the United States, and this is not a secret to any of our enemies, okay? You must keep that clear in your brain. You know less than your enemy. Trust me, okay? I know less than the enemy knows, okay? The big boys. But apparently, for instance, subways, and these guys were in town because they were getting trained in more of this. They were getting trained in methods to secure these situations, but they were already 10, 20-year experts in the current existing infrastructure for this. But now imagine that every train subway has a computer box that's every so many miles down a track. And this is what tells trains to go fast, go slow, switch the tracks so the two trains don't bang into each other. It's all open circuits with absolutely no security whatsoever. No security whatsoever. All right. So a cyber attack on that level can only be enforced. And again, when they strike, you don't know that they're coming, right? So you don't tend to put out a bunch of forces around these boxes, right? And again, what kind of force are you going to put around a single box? 1 cop, 2 cop, 3 cop? You're going to put a turret, that's remote control to shoot anybody who gets close? I mean, like an Aliens movie or something. What are you going to do? It's a multi-billion-dollar solution because we have crappy technology. Now, we have technology that what I like to say is it's technology that's been allowed to exist because we haven't been assholes to each other. But the second that these guys want to ratchet it up, all this stuff is vulnerable, right? You trust that the next hamburger that you're going to eat isn't full of strychnine or cyanide. You trust that the water you drink is not full of something that will kill you in 10 minutes. You trust the world. And you should be able to trust the world. That's the way the world should work. Anyone who's ever caught planning this kind of stuff should be put away forever, if not grind into hamburger meat, put in a rocket and shipped to the sun, man. Or into deep space or something, right? But what they said was they could commandeer these boxes and create huge, huge, deadly crashes. So not every city in the United States has subways. New York has a ton. Chicago has quite a few. I think, was it Oregon and Seattle have quite a few. We have a little one here in Los Angeles. There's Caltrans up in the Bay Area. Think about all the freight trains shipping things that are important. Imagine they're trying to ship tanks from one place to another because we are in the middle of a physical reinforcement maneuver. You're going to have to thin out your troops just to protect the communication systems between them. Or someone's going to have to spend a couple nights up like an Apollo 13 script and figure out a solution to encrypt these boxes and literally lay them in cement so that no one can get to them except for some dude with triple, quadruple keys or something, right? Because everything is also susceptible to radiation, electromagnetic radiation. So you can walk up to a box and just put a thing up next to it and just fry all the circuits. Okay, so we don't have a big train wreck at that point. Maybe. I'm not familiar with how this works. What if they totally lose the ability to communicate with each other? Chaos. It's just simple, man. Once you cause chaos, you will find what people are made out of. We had this whole Karen epidemic here in the United States. And Karen's on both sides of the fence, right? Karens that say don't do what they tell you, and Karens that say do what they tell you. I just saw a Karen right outside during the 4th of July in the United States of America where her neighborhood was just blowing up their finale wad of fireworks, and she's just screaming at the top of her lungs. Here in Huntington Beach, everybody who's scared of fireworks keeps blaming the problem on their pets. Okay, just because a pet, barks when a firework goes off. I mean, they're barking at everything that goes by. If they're barking dogs, they'll get over it. They'll be all right. They don't have PTSD forever. Sure, they're confused about what the hell's going on, but they're confused when the mailman drops mail through the mail slot. If they're that kind of hyper dog. Every time I go to my buddy Dave's house, if I ring that front doorbell because he's not reading his text messages to open the garage door and softly push me in the house, 3 dogs come barking at the door. They're not in trauma the rest of the night. They just need to make sure that I am one of the blessed souls that can come in the house. They own the keys to who's allowed in the house. It's kind of cute, actually, right? So, sort of the moral of the story is you want to have your head on straight when if this stuff were to occur. Seems pretty obligatory at this point with all the pre-programming that we're getting. They're going to try something. Hopefully, again, there's this secret military out there that's good, that's just sitting around waiting while people die of these drinks. I mean, it's just weird. Imagine, it's like, I believe that people should be allowed to do whatever they want with their body. I know it sounds crazy. I would wish them to think it through a little bit better and maybe study something so that they would get more informed. But, stupid is as stupid does, right? Another old saying my friend used to say, too dumb to live. All right. So I'll lose my entire family if this stuff is absolutely obligatorily going to destroy your life. I don't know that that's the case. I find that in one frame of mind hard to believe, another frame of mind totally believable. So I'm just on the fence with the whole thing. But if this stuff starts to occur, you want to keep your wits about you. And you probably want to take any provisions that you need to take to maybe print some photographs, get some stuff on hard copy. I know that Kamala Harris doesn't think that there's copy machines in probably 47 of 50 states, but they do exist. There's things called printers. There's friends who have printers. There's services that have printers. Get whatever data you need out, your birth certificate, identification, have that always available to identify who you are so you can move around a little bit. If stuff starts to occur, you need to consider, where do you live? You want to stay where you live? Are you safe where you live? Are you a conservative in a very liberal area of the world? You may want to rethink that. We've got at least one listener who is taking full movement measures to get out of areas that are not suitable for his mindset. It is interesting that once you live in a community that is fairly conservative, and again, we're just a little bit right of center, that you are more safe. Everybody's packed. Everybody's got guns. Everyone has millions of rounds of ammunition. Everyone's family oriented. But every neighborhood always has a neighborhood that's just right next door, where even if they're technically conservative, they're on the edge of their wits, and, stuff happens, right? I mean, where I'm living right now, we've had more, it's still very low, but I've seen probably a quadrupling of the homeless people. And I've seen people that are homeless that don't look like they've been homeless very long, but they're already in these really bad states of mind. You can just tell. So take that and multiply it times 100,000. You can't be in that frame of mind if you can keep from doing it, right? If you want to survive, especially. But you need to find your exit strategies. You need to find what's going on. Where can you survive? I have a lot of friends of mine that are big hikers and big sort of off-road guys. They have friends with farms, and they're those people with those big properties are going to want people they can trust who can bring all their ammunition and protection out there, plus some food and water. Help cultivate the land, help build a place where people can exist, because I'm sure that the plan is not to injure these various sectors of operation and then have them be restored within a month or two. That will do a tremendous amount of damage, believe me, but I think that what they're looking for is a situation where they can have multiple states out for months and months and months and months. And I can't even imagine Los Angeles, California, for instance, being out for 2 months without power. I can't imagine what that would look like. Every single month that this thing would be pending restoration of those resources, water, food, electricity. We can all deal without the internet. I mean, that would be almost a silver lining in the whole thing. People will find out that they actually did just fine in 1995 and before. But they might go nuts. People with weapons might use them to get food. Again, watch that Twilight Zone. I forgot the name of it, but it's about these two women in a brownstone in New York City. The Earth is somehow losing its orbit with the sun and is getting way too close to the sun. Technically, it would just be an infinitesimal change in its orbit, but it's starting to be like 110 every day. So during the day, they hide inside the apartment, and they're just trying to survive. One family leaves that morning because they're trying to go to Florida because they heard it's a little cooler down there. But at one point, this Jethro character knocks on the door, finds a way into the brownstone. He brings a gun. Or no, sorry, he comes in and the old lady has a gun. He takes the gun out of her hand. He kind of holds him at gunpoint. He gets some water out of their refrigerator, which is like gold in this new world. And he's just drinking it and pouring it all over himself, just wasting it. And he's feral. And he points a gun at one of the ladies, and finally he just puts the gun down. He starts crying, and he says, I'm so sorry I did this to you. I'm not this kind of person. But I think the story goes is that he lost his wife and his daughter before he went feral. And so, it's just a little lesson in how we behave. Then there's the other one where the doctor built the bomb shelter underneath his house. There is a call over the radio that incoming missiles are coming in from Russia, because this is right during the nuclear threat of America, 50s to early 60s. And everyone was kind of making fun of him for having this little bunker underneath his house at the beginning of the episode because it was his birthday. And as soon as the radio announcements come over that this impending nuclear war is coming, the missiles are on their way, everybody runs home first and, tries to take shelter. Some people don't have basements. Some people realize even with basements it won't help them. So they all end up back at the doctor's house asking to let them into the shelter, but it's only made for him, his wife, and his son. And he won't let him in. He's like, look, it's not going to help you guys out. I only have enough food for my family. You should have listened to the warnings. You should have built a shelter. Someone in my hometown actually built a giant shelter. It actually went out underneath the street, which he wasn't supposed to do. But they eventually get a battle ram and they knock down the door of his place. And there's all a bunch of racial issues that come up. And people are trying to, make an argument of like, well, I should be the one that goes in and not you. My family's better than your family for these particular reasons. And then when it was all over, it came out on the radio that it was a false alarm. Nothing's going to happen. And one person says, I believe, something to the effect of, okay, well, oh my gosh, everyone apologizes to the guy, and they kind of try to apologize to each other, but it's sort of like, a little too soon. And they say to the doctor, somebody says, okay, well, we'll all go home and everything will be okay, And the doctor, I think one of his parting lines in the episode is, nah, the damage is all done. We'll never be the same again, because everybody's true colors came out. Now, it's not really the case. You can repair those kind of things, but it would take decades, right, for that neighborhood to reconstitute their love for each other, which they had the second before this false alarm happens on the radio. So I'm hopeful that none of this occurs, of course, right? But I think it would be at this point, we have more indications and repeated history that your barista boys aren't paying attention to history at all. They just aren't. They're living in Professor Positive world, saying la, la, la the whole time. And that simply won't work, will it? So we're grown-ups. We're going to have to read the writing on the wall. Hopefully, again, there's this mysterious force that comes in, Space Force or whatever the hell it is, and it saves the day. But, there's a lot of people waiting for Jesus to come back too. And they're enduring pain and suffering and not taking action because they think God's going to come down and fix it all. There's a small collection of people that think aliens are going to come down and fix everything. The game on Earth, I guarantee you, is at least in part for us to show that we have the capability of fixing our own problems and holding people accountable who are going against do no harm common law. So Inject positivity into the world as much as you possibly can. Sneak these things into conversations. Maybe even make it a joke. Well, when they're going to do the cyber attack, blah, blah, blah. And at least you're getting the information into people's brains. Oh, well, yeah, that's really weird. Maybe they are going to, you're helping a few people out. Those who probably continue to wear coverings on their face at this point in 2021 are probably folks that are going to vanish. Stupid is as stupid does, man. Don't lose any sleep over those folks. You can't, because there's going to be a lot of them if anything happens, man. So, anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. I know there's a couple episodes in a row that are a little more serious, but you know what? That's what grown-ups do, right? We talk about the real stuff. And hey, man, it's 71 degrees out in the middle of the night, so I'm really happy. But anyway, if you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. Everything's there. That's all I'm going to say. To the Patrons and PayPal people, thank you so much for supporting the channel. I always welcome new folks as well. You do get episodes early over there, and you get your own private fireside chats. Anyway, take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.